Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with Shawn Swyx Wang in his new book, The Coding Career Handbook. We talked about how to break in as a developer and also how to market yourself as a developer as you go further along in your career. So let's talk with Shawn. So what I ask every single person that comes on the channel is like, tell us your origin story. How did you get to where you're at and what are you doing right now?
I don't feel like a superhero yet, but I can give that a crack. I'm born and raised in Singapore. I went to college in the US and started a career in finance. So I did 6 years of investment banking and hedge funds and basically burned out. It was a very high stress job and realized that I had learned a little bit of coding on the side. I then went through a boot camp to go transition to a full-time software engineer. I did JS though, not C#.
Okay.
But and then eventually found my way through writing and speaking in conferences and meetups to a job at Netlify, where we do a lot of site hosting and stuff like that. And recently just joined AWS this year as a senior developer advocate.
Okay, cool.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
that's awesome. So like you went the boot camp route, learned some stuff on your own. And then, so how did you make that? A lot of people, when they come to our boot camp or they come to other boot camps, how did you make that leap? Like you're coming out there with that boot camp grad. How did you get that first software job? What did you do?
Honestly, the boot camp helped do that. I think some boot camps, this is a priority in terms of picking boot camps. You know, I was in New
Right.
York, so I just picked from the New York selection of boot camps. But one of them, Full Stack, the one I went to,
Right.
actually had a hiring day, and they actually get employers to come sit down with you. And I ended up getting a job with the very first person I sat down with, and she hired me.
Okay.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
That was it. It was luck, and I actually interviewed and almost took another offer in between, but I ended up going with hers. The job ended up not working out, but I think once you have that job cracking in and you have the title of software engineer, all these subsequent jobs are a lot easier.
Right. It's amazing where someone will hire you it's hard to get hired out of a boot camp, but 6 months later, after you've been working somewhere for 6 months, every recruiter on the face of the planet will call you. Suddenly you've arrived and you're capable and you really don't know anything new other than you've sat on the job for 6 months. So
Well, so the dirty secret is I actually stayed in that first job for exactly 6 months.
Yeah.
And the day I decided to quit was when two startup CEOs DM'd me on the same day asking if I wanted to interview with them.
Wow.
And
Right.
at that point, I realized that I didn't need that job anymore. So
Right,
I just
exactly.
left.
So you're doing a lot of things. You're writing a book. So you got a book
Yes,
out.
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called?
So it's called the Coding Career Handbook, and it's to address all the non-technical parts of a software career. Because I feel like it's underserved compared to all the technical elements. So
Yep.
people always tell you to crack the coding interview, but after you are done with the interview, what happens to the rest of your career? And so I'm trying to fill in the gaps there. And
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
mostly focused on the junior dev to senior dev transition. So those 4 to 8 year period. But I have a little bit about getting that first job because obviously I did that as well, and I wanted to write down my advice for others.
Okay. So I think one of the big advices you had was like learn in public. What's
sir.
that mean? And explain to our crowd, like how can they learn in public?
Yeah, you can actually, the book's site, it's so well known that I actually got the domain learninpublic.org. So
Yeah.
you can head there and
That's
actually
awesome.
read the essay. I just posted the essay for free for people. It's this idea that we're trained for our entire lives to learn in private, and that's the way that school is run. But I think that in this new economy or in this new industry, that doesn't serve us very well. And we would do much better and learn much faster and grow our network and our careers much faster if we learned in public. And this is not a call to broadcast every single second of your life. It is just saying that you're 100% private and you might want to go from 0% public to maybe 1% public or 5% public, right? Not
Right.
huge, just a little bit more than you're doing right now.
Right.
And the reason that works is because you learn faster when you put stuff out. And some of it is just learning how to learn, like taking notes, right? And having gone through them and then putting them out there makes you retain them better. So even if nobody reads it, you remember it better. You can refer to your own notes better. But once you put it out, And if people see it and you get something wrong, they're going to tell you, because that's how the internet works. If someone's wrong on the internet, you like people just like climb over themselves
That's true.
to correct
Yeah.
you. That's actually called Cunningham's Law. And the reason I know it's called Cunningham's Law is because I was on a podcast and I said the wrong name. So I said it was Godwin's Law. And of course, someone came and corrected me. Cunningham's Law is self-proving.
That's funny.
So that's one thing. But then also, once you've gotten, that's the cause side. Like someone will come and correct you. But also, once you've gotten something wrong in public, it's so embarrassing that you never repeat that mistake ever again. So if you want to grow as a person, you actually want to have as many of those experiences as as is justified, not as possible, because you don't want to be a brand, you don't want to build a brand of being wrong in public, but you want to be corrected, right, of your misconceptions, of your mistakes, as soon as possible, because it's not about always being seen to be right. It's about eventually being the best version of yourself that you can be. And the way that you get there is to get help from others. And I think this is a very reliable way of doing that. And then the final piece is that because you're putting stuff out there, people start to notice, earners, learners. They like to participate in that journey. They like to help you along. And so you start to grow a community or a network around you. And that actually massively expands your surface area for luck, for like just random stuff happening to you because people know of you and they can send opportunities your way. So that can mean jobs, that can be mentors, that can mean business opportunities. And it really, like this what we're doing right now is a result of me writing something that caught your eye, whatever it was, I don't even know. But like it just, it builds that network that that is so essential, especially for building a career in tech. And I think, there's so much more I can say about here, but I'm just gonna stop there to see what your reaction is.
Oh, so good. I loved your take on luck, by the way. Can I just say that? Like, I did read that part in your book. It's super good. It's your take on luck being that it's not something that happens to you. You can influence it, and we totally believe that too. We're totally in that same mindset. You can maximize your opportunities. You can maximize your luck. I thought that take was super good. I totally believe
you can create luck.
You can.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a pair of socks or a lucky rabbit's foot. A lot of times we say, hey, I got lucky when I got that job interview. But what you did is you prepped, you built some projects, you had some stuff to show. And we perceive it as luck when you actually did some work to make that happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can I ask you, what are your thoughts on 100 Days of Code? Because this seems to sort of align with your sort of take on this. So being publicly accountable, where you're like, oh man, I use this hashtag and every day I say like I did something today.
Right. Yeah. When you publicly commit something, you're more likely to finish it. Sometimes there are exceptions.
Right.
Right. And I like that people are committing to sprints. I don't like one aspect of it is that it ends. That once people finish the 100 days, they end. Sometimes they start a second 100 days.
Yeah.
But you don't see that very often, and I don't like that because I like to encourage this idea of an infinite game, that you're in this for the long haul, and it just needs to be part of an identity. It's not a project that you start and finish. It just is a part of you now, and it's a thing that you're going to be doing as long as you basically are physically able to. And so that's where I defer. The rest I'm fine with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I like that. I do too. Yeah, that super aligns with the way that we think about this stuff too, for sure.
So what do you do? How do you challenge people that have like severe imposter syndrome? Like, hey, I'm not putting my stuff out there, because we know this. The tech community can be very helpful, and sometimes they can be just cruel. I mean, like I've live coded before, and like I'm typing out a physical line of code, and someone will make a comment while I'm typing it out. Like, give me a second to hit the backspace key, man. So what about people that are afraid? They're afraid to even start that part of it, learning in public.
Yeah. Divorce your identity from your work.
Okay.
The version of you, the work that's produced by you today, ideally is going to be the worst work. Like there's going to be a better version tomorrow and the day after.
Okay.
And if you put your identity in your work, when people criticize your work, you feel like they're criticizing you. But really, if you divorce it, they're just trying to help you be better. So you should be happy when people criticize you. You should look forward to it.
Right.
And the way I like to phrase this is that you can learn so much on the internet for the low price of your ego. Like, what is more important to you? Like, looking perfect or actually being better?
Right.
Feeling right or being right? You know, like that kind of thing. Like, feeling good or being good. And so I mean, of course, I have that imposter syndrome as well. Like, who the hell am I to write a book on career advice? I haven't made it. But I'm putting the best version of what I think is true out there, and just let it be. And I'll try to make it better. But if anyone disagrees with me, they now can. Instead of me keeping it to myself and not ever being sure if what I think is true is true. So I don't know. Like, yeah, you have imposter syndrome is real, and I fight it too. and I have somewhat of a brand telling people to fight imposter syndrome, and I fight with it myself. But you get over it by realizing what's more important is that you grow, and that fear is limiting your growth, and you got to just get over it. And it usually isn't as bad when you actually do it, because people are generally nice and supportive. But even when people are mean, you can turn your biggest critics into your biggest mentors by listening.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think a lot of times when we're first starting out, it's an obsession of, I'm trying to learn something. But then I also have this obsession where I have to know all of this stuff. And if I don't know all of this stuff, like this, 20-year veteran, then I can't work in the industry. And I think that's just not true. What do you think about that?
Well, how do you think they got there?
I know. Right. Yeah. So I get comments all the time where people say, back in the day, we didn't have books or the internet, and you don't know what you're doing because you can just Google everything. And I'm like, and so is that okay? I think it's the greatest time to learn how to code is right now, because there's so much information out there that you can learn from a school or a book or a website or YouTube or Twitter. I think there's just so much information out there. What do you think about that?
That's true. It's a fantastic time. I'll even go one step further than you and say that 2020 itself has condensed about 10 years of digital transformation into 10 months.
Yeah.
And the global demand for software in general has approximately doubled. Zoom is a household name even among my mom and like non-technical people.
Right.
And guess who makes Zoom? Software engineers. And it's a fantastic time to learn how to code, and it's easier too because there's people like you guys and there's Free Code Camp, which I used to get started. The one thing I think putting stuff out there and putting yourself out there is important. The one thing I caution people, because there's one downside. There's a lot of people who don't like this idea. They don't like seeing beginners write articles. And because a lot of them are bad, they just objectively are, and it's fine. You can be fine with putting out bad stuff. My encouragement to you is do the work. Do your homework, do some research, make sure your code is right, and then say, this is the best version of what I've done. I've done my work. If I'm wrong, please correct me, and then put it out there. Because there's a wide spectrum of people. Some people are too perfectionists, right? And they're too much ego in their work, and then they never publish. They draft the whole thing and they don't hit publish because they don't think it's perfect yet. So you need to strike the right balance between getting it right, but then also shipping. And some people do too much of just ship every day, and they never get anything right. And some people do too much of get everything right and never ship. So you gotta hit that middle.
Yeah, I've seen senior devs that never ship. So like they will never ship stuff. They're always constantly refactoring, constantly rewriting just code and things like that. So,
by the way, the label of senior is the same. I have the same issue with that as the 100 days of code. So what if you got the label of senior? Do you think you're done?
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, we talk about that a lot. Like, what in your mind? So in your mind, what is a senior dev? How do you define a senior developer versus a mid? Let's say that.
Oh God. So I have a whole essay. I have a whole essay on this. It's called the junior developer versus senior developer, and I do like a compare and contrast things. And a lot of people have a very wide range of definitions. Quite honestly, the only definition that counts is, are you paid like a senior? If you are, then you are senior. All right. It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
you know,
100%.
money talks. Money talks. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything else is just titles. Like you could slap a senior label on someone who doesn't know what they're doing. It's fine. But
Right.
like but then also there's like the behavior, like in terms of like what I would pay for as a senior, and the probably the most reliable metric is, can you independently ship? Can you independently take care of a task, or do you need help? Do you need supervision?
Right.
And the phrase that I like to use is, does the buck stop with you, or do I need to constantly monitor every single action that you take? So as a junior, you kind of you break into tech and you're not expected to know everything, and that's great. And eventually you start to learn the ropes, and the point at which you're senior is when you realize that you mostly don't need help, but when you do, you escalate it, right? You don't keep your troubles to yourself and hide it because you're insecure. You just know when something's just beyond you, and you need to forward it up to senior management.
Right.
And that's a mark of a senior too, the maturity to recognize your own limits. So I have a lot of other advice on like what separates a junior versus a senior. One of the other advice that I often give is that seniors mentor others. Like, you lift others up around you. You're not married to this idea of a 10x developer. Seniors are 10x by sort of raising 10 other people around them.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's how you 10x. You 10x a team.
We refer to this as rockstar coder versus grumpy coder guy. We have grumpy coder guy who sits in his office and won't help anybody, and just does his thing, and that's it, versus rockstar who helps everybody around him and is able to communicate in a way that like can talk about his code and can present his code.
Yeah, I mean, I had a grumpy coder guy as my tech lead in that first job that I had, and I mean, it's no point. Like, he was good. He just thought.
Oh, they're always good. They're
He
always
just
good
thought
at the
he was
job.
better than everyone else, and then he had to do everything, or it wasn't good, and it just wasn't health. It wasn't a healthy environment to be in.
Right.
So you don't want to be that kind of person.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you want to be a grumpy coder guy. So tell us a little bit about like how do you think these developers fit in this economy today? Like, how does tech work? Like, how are people making money being a coder? Like, how are they doing it?
Yeah. So this goes into my obsession with software business models and how the economy and tech kind of intersect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit of my background, right? I did investment banking and finance,
Right.
so I cannot stop thinking about it. But also, I just think developers in general should be more curious about how money is made with their code. Like,
Sure.
Code is not all created equal, and you can write a lot of lines of code on a business project or mission that is completely worthless, or you can write a very very small piece of code that is just extremely effective. So you should understand business impact, and actually at the senior levels, that's how software engineers are evaluated, not your quality of code, but the business impact of your code. So you should
Right.
understand business impact. And so there's a lot here. Let me just talk about business models, right? So a lot of developers get into into sort of writing software for a living through agencies, and I think that's where a lot of especially front-end developers will work. Like, just kind of, my uncle is a dentist, they need a website, all right, I'll do a website for you.
Right.
And then at the higher ends is like a very snazzy marketing agency doing a website for Nike for like a
Right.
marketing campaign. Those are all agencies. And that's great, but you're still kind of trading your time for money. Like, I'll work on this for 10 hours and I'll bill you whatever. And there's a limit to how much people bill for their money. Like, you could work up to 100, 150. If you're a consultant where you're sort of the world expert in something, you can go up to 500 to 5,000 a day. But then you start thinking about other forms of making an impact with your software. So I think the next level is probably some sort of and by the way, a lot of companies employ internal agencies. So even though you don't technically work for an agency,
Right.
if you're sitting inside of a company and you make websites for them, you're an agency internally.
Right. Yeah.
So then you start to build products. And most often this is like apps, where people can just buy a version of your app, and you don't spend any incremental code for an incremental customer, and that starts to divorce your time from your money, right? You're spending time to create the best version of the app that you can, but the money can just flow in and out depending on the marketing, depending on the product market fit, depending on just the customer demand for whatever problem you're solving.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's more like a product business instead of a services business. And then I think it starts to, the next level of that, it starts to become more of matching buyers and sellers, like basically providing a marketplace. And a lot of tech companies also fall into this category, like obviously Amazon where I work, but also Airbnb, Uber is a marketplace, because you're matching buyers and sellers, and you're providing the software to be the middleman, and you take a cut of whatever sales you help generate, right? So that's a very effective business, because there's a network effect on both sides. There's a group of buyers who are looking for sellers, and a group of sellers looking for buyers, and you get to be a very sticky product. People find it a lot harder to churn from marketplaces than they do products. Like I could just switch apps without an issue, but it's very hard for me to switch off of an Uber or an Airbnb. It's possible, but it's hard. And the final, like, that's kind of, I'm gonna stop there. But I think those when you're at a marketplace, you can sell. You can have an internal agency, you can have an internal product business, you can have advertising business. A lot of social networks are basically advertising businesses. They're selling your attention.
Right.
But like these are all business models from which your software, your time spent writing code is made, and you should be very conscious about where you direct your attention and time, because you're basically picking a sector of the tech industry to be in, and you should probably pick one that you're happy with and you can make money from.
Okay, cool. I like that. I was talking to a bunch of college people at a local college here, and they were asking me, like, how do I come up with business ideas? And it's funny that you said that, because that's exactly what I told them. I said, take Uber and look at a thing that you can trade with somebody and just match them together. And the next 20 business models that we can't do without will follow that. Like, and then you see like fractional airplanes, fractional Uber, you got Angie's List. You've got like everyone is trying to match the buyers and sellers, and the software itself is kind of very similar. And that's really not the hard part. It's just like coming up with a thing that people want to match two people together with, whatever that is. And even dating sites is just like Uber, except you're sharing a car, and the other one you're trying to find someone to take to dinner. So like, it's pretty fascinating.
Well, the challenge for people there is that's a very high difficulty. That's a high failure rate, a high difficulty, high risk, high reward market to be in, because there's a cold start problem.
Yeah.
A marketplace is only valuable if there are buyers and sellers on both sides, if there's liquidity in economics terms, and most marketplaces do not. So you really need to hustle a lot to get those started, or you're probably better off doing one of the other things first and then eventually developing to a marketplace. So
one of the product, something like that. Yeah.
Or like a one-sided marketplace, which is essentially, I go more into this in the tech strategy chapter, but you can start like a D2C marketplace where you are the only supplier to all the buyers, and then you can let in other suppliers as third parties, and then eventually evolve the other side of the marketplace. So I definitely see a lot of those happening.
Hey, if you're new to the channel, my name is Bobby Davis. I'm the founder and CEO of Foundry, a boot camp where we teach you how to code. Hey, if you like our content, please subscribe, give us a like, and hit the bell for notifications about all of our future great content. Talk to us about like why a developer should be a writer. Like in our boot camp, we require people to blog, and we get the comment, "Hey, I'm a coder, not a writer." Like, why am I doing this? Like, why do you think people should do that?
You're a coder, you're absolutely a writer. One of the elements of senior developers is that they document their code and then they design their code before writing it. There's this old adage that weeks of coding can save you hours of planning. If you don't plan, then you can just like dive straight into it. And if you don't, basically writing is, it's not about the action of writing, right? It's about forcing you to think, forcing you to put thoughts down, organize them, and share them, so that you can assess them and share your knowledge, but also to assess that if you have the right ideas. So there are all these elements of writing, and it just is such a generically good thing. I probably my longest chapter is on writing. There are so many reasons to write, but I think fundamentally you want to build your skills, build your network, and then also establish proof of work. So this is okay. How do we interview for jobs? So we interview by doing a technical interview, like a 30-45 minute interview where we like do some code problem and exercise. And we also try to get the interview by condensing our experience down to a resume and hoping the other side can read that resume and get that you're someone worth hiring. That's a very extremely lossy algorithm, because anyone can say anything on the resume, or a good person, someone who's great, can have a terrible resume and miss out on an opportunity that they might not have. Same thing for an interview. You might just perform terribly in an interview because it's a high stress environment, or the question is just bad. So what's better is if you can establish a record of work outside of all this artificial interview crap, where you can just establish over time your expertise and your reputation on a certain topic that you want to specialize in and be known for. And anyone. So when I interviewed at Google, I did meet people who did not know who I was, but I interviewed at Amazon. They Googled me in front of me, and they could see that I wasn't nobody, and I actually was passionate about my work, and I made significant contributions, at least on the open source side of things. And they can instantly verify that. Like this is the sort of thing you want, a compression algorithm that takes years to create, but it's instantly verifiable, and that generates proof of work, so that you just get past all this terrible screening questions and charades that we do because people do not write, right? So you get past all of that because you write, and it's just a wonderful thing for your career.
Right, and I can't tell you, Shawn, how many times that I've told people to do this and have proof of work, build a portfolio, build projects, build blog items. And they tell me, well, that's not how Google hires. They don't look at any of that. They're going to ask you those 5 technical algorithm questions or data structure questions. And that's all I need to know. And that's the only, and I keep telling them, like, man, people are human. Like, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt on a whiteboard test if you have 20 articles about, front end development and they're hiring a front end developer. I mean, like, they just will. I mean, if you show them working code, that's way more efficient than like them. You failed the whiteboard test or something like that, or what do you think about that? How did your experience at Amazon work out? What did you do? How did you win that gig?
I mean, I asked to interview, and then they interviewed me, and then I got it. It wasn't hard at all.
Right, yeah.
One aspect of doing this for a while is that, for example, I knew my prospective hiring manager for 2 years before joining him, before even asking for a job with him. So they
Can I ask, how did you know him? When you say you knew him?
On Twitter, just back and forth talking about technical topics. So after knowing someone for a couple of years, there's nothing to interview. You've seen them at their worst, you've seen them at their best. You know how they they're passionate about something. What is there to interview?
Right,
yeah, exactly.
So the rest was just like convincing the other people that were involved in the interview loop.
Yeah.
But I have also, just to directly address your point, I have interviewed at Google, and they do insist on the 4 or 5 rounds of technical whiteboard interviewing. And they'll make the decisions based on that, because the biggest companies have a very politically correct way of hiring, which is they need to remove all elements of disparity and strictly hire on defensible evaluation criteria. But I've seen people not do well there and still get hired because they said they went through it and they got rejected, and then some Googler was like, hey, this is ridiculous, like I know this, I can vouch for this person, we'll come back in, let's fix this. So like establishing that reputation outside of work is great. But also the other point I wanted to make was most companies are not Google. They do not hire
Right.
in a vacuum, and they will evaluate you based on your past work, and that's good for you because then you have an opportunity to stand out.
Yeah, this is something we say a lot of too. Like if you look at the let's just call them the FANG companies, whatever. What percentage of developers work at those companies? If you take the whole pool of developers, it is tiny, 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 tiny. You will probably never work there. You, as a developer, you never have to work there if you don't want to. There's so many other developer jobs out there that have their own process that isn't the same as Google's. We get people on the channel all the time that ask us like, "Hey, how do I prepare for a Google interview?" And we're like, "Well, look it up. There's books written. There's videos. There's specific ways because they're going to stick to that process." But we're like, "But do you really want to work there? Like, or is it just like you have this weird like?"
That's the only job that it's available.
Exactly, it's the only developer job that's out there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just not
The
true.
one thing I will say, Shawn, I want to get your opinion on this is like, let's say that I interview for Google and you interview for Google, and I walk in there and like I nail all of my whiteboard exams, and then you nail all your whiteboard exams, but you have this social presence. I do not. I feel like even in the Google interview, building all this exterior stuff that they can look at, and even though that's subjective and not objective, you're still going to get the nod. You would beat other candidates out because of, I call it the social proof, like where they can look at your portfolio, your projects, the things you're doing on Twitter. And the genius thing that we say all the time is like, DM hiring managers that could hire you. They may not hire you today, but like, and what you did at AWS is like, you basically just went around the entire process because you knew the guy that's hiring you for 2 years. And he said, "I know what you're about. Let me hire you."
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Make the resume the last part of your hiring process, a formality, rather than the first part.
Yeah. All right. Well, Shawn, where can people find you if they don't know who you are already? What's a link that they can find you at and maybe purchase your book? I think it's a great read and they should check it out. Where can they find you at?
Thank you. So they can find me on my personal site, Swyx.io, where I have like blogs and talks and podcasts and stuff. And they can find the book at learninpublic.org. It's just a book now, but I hope to develop it into a broader community thing where I recognize the work that other people are doing learning in public. It's a movement. I didn't start it. I'm just part of it. And I think it's growing and I would like more people to join.
So that was a fascinating conversation to have with Shawn, specifically parts about learning in public and becoming a writer. Now, a lot of us think that writing isn't that important, but if you listen to us and Shawn, increasingly building a blog, writing about technical articles, increases your own knowledge, but also gives you massive credibility in the marketplace. So I hope this helps. Good luck and keep coding.